You know, sometimes people look at you and decide what you're worth before you even open your mouth. I walked into that bank holding my old glass jar, the one my late husband used to drop his spare change in every night for 40 years. My hands were shaking, but not from age, from memories. Each coin in that jar had a story, a birthday, a bill we barely paid, a prayer answered. The young teller smiled politely, but when the manager saw me, he laughed. Said, "Ma'am, we don't count pocket change here. You might want to try the coin machine at the grocery store." The whole line chuckled. My cheeks burned. I wanted to walk away, but something in me said, "No, let him see." So I set that jar down on his shiny desk. When he finally sighed and dropped a few coins into the scanner, it beeped once, then froze. His smile vanished. The screen started flashing red. That's when he leaned forward, eyes wide, and whispered, "Where did you get these?" They say old people keep junk. Maybe that's true for some, but not for me. Every little thing I hold on to has a heartbeat, a memory, a name attached. That jar of coins sitting by my window? It wasn't just metal and glass. It was 40 years of life. 40 years with my Harold. Harold used to come home every evening, tired from his factory job, smelling of oil and steel. He'd empty his pockets on the kitchen counter, smile, and say, "Every penny's got a purpose, Ellie." Then he'd drop his coins into that old pickle jar. Plink, 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 like tiny raindrops falling into our future. Back then, we didn't have much. Some nights, dinner was just soup and hope, but we had each other. When the bills got too high, that jar came to the rescue. When our car broke down, that jar saved us. Even when Harold got sick and couldn't work anymore, he kept dropping coins in. Said it made him feel like he was still providing. He passed away 6 years ago, and ever since, I couldn't bring myself to touch that jar. It sat there on the shelf beside his picture, a quiet little reminder that love isn't always loud. But last month, the letter came, the one I'd been dreading. Property tax due, $3,100. If I didn't pay it soon, they'd take the house, the same house where Harold and I raised our kids. I stared at that number for hours. My Social Security check barely covered my medicine and groceries. I'd already cut corners. No cable, no takeout, no heat after 10 p.m., still not enough. Then one night I was dusting the shelf when the light hit that glass jar just right. The coins shimmered like they were whispering, "It's time." I sat down, held it in my lap, and cried. "Harold," I said, "I think I'm finally going to have to break open your jar." The next morning, I wrapped it in an old dish towel, slipped on my best Sunday coat, and caught the bus downtown. The whole ride, people stared, probably wondering what an old black woman was doing, clutching a jar like it was gold. When I reached the bank, I hesitated at the door. It wasn't my usual little community branch. This one was new. Big glass walls, silver floors, people in fancy suits. The kind of place Harold never liked. He used to call it the cold kind of rich. But desperation doesn't care about comfort. I pushed open the glass door and felt every pair of eyes in the room land on me. There was a young woman behind the counter, chewing gum. A man in a sharp blue suit pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. And in the center, behind a sleek desk, a tall white man with slick hair and a gold nameplate, Mark Hensley, branch manager. He looked up, glanced at my jar, then back at me. "Can I help you, ma'am?" His tone wasn't kind. It was cautious, like I might be lost. I smiled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, I'd like to cash in these coins, please. I believe some of them might be old. My husband collected them." He blinked. Then that smirk spread across his face. "Coins? We don't manually count coins here, ma'am. We've got machines for that, at the grocery store or the county fair." The people in line behind me chuckled. My heart started to pound, but I stood tall. "I'd still like to have them checked, please." The teller leaned toward him, whispering something. He sighed and waved her off. Fine, fine. But don't it say I didn't warn you? The scanner won't even read rusty metal. He gestured to the counter. I placed the jar down carefully. It clinked as I did, like 1,000 tiny voices waiting to be heard. He unscrewed the lid lazily, like he couldn't wait to prove me wrong. Let's see what Grandma's been hoarding all these years. The coins spilled across the tray. Silver, bronze, dull copper, a few shimmering, brighter than the rest. Some were so old they looked like history itself. He scoffed. Half of these look fake. I said nothing. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else. Something rising inside me like a memory I couldn't yet name. He grabbed a handful and dumped them into the machine. The first few clattered down the chute. Click, click, click. The scanner beeped once, then froze. He frowned, hit a button, tried again. Another beep. Then the screen flashed red. The teller peered over his shoulder. Sir, it's saying authentication required. He stared at the screen, his smirk fading. That can't be right. He grabbed a coin and held it to the light. Then another. Then another. For the first time, his voice dropped to a whisper. Where did you get these? The room went silent. Even the man on the phone stopped talking. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I told you, I said quietly. They belong to my husband, Harold Booker. Worked at the steel mill 40 years. He didn't respond. He was too busy Googling something on his phone, the color draining from his face. After a long pause, he looked up, eyes wide, jaw trembling. Ma'am, he said, these are 1943 Lincoln copper pennies. Only a handful were ever made. Each one of these coins could be worth hundreds of thousands. I blinked. My breath caught. What are you saying? He swallowed hard. I'm saying, Mrs. Booker, you might want to sit down. I didn't sit down right away. I couldn't. It was like my legs had turned to stone. Everyone in that bank was staring, not at me anymore, but at the coins. The same people who'd been laughing minutes ago were now whispering, leaning forward, trying to catch a glimpse. The manager, Mr. Hensley, was sweating. His fingers shook as he picked up another coin and placed it gently on a small velvet pad. This one too, he murmured. The teller gasped. That's another 1943 copper penny, sir. He looked at me like I'd just walked out of a history book. Ma'am, he said, his voice trembling, these coins they're from a rare minting error during World War II. They shouldn't even exist. Only a few of them are known to survive. The last one sold for $1.7 million. I just blinked. Million? That word didn't sound real to me. All I could think about was Harold. Sitting by the radio years ago, counting coins, humming softly. He used to say, "One day, Ellie, these little things will surprise you." And Lord, he wasn't wrong. Hensley took a deep breath. We need to verify this with our appraisal department. May I take these to the back for examination? I hesitated. No, sir. You can look at them right here. He frowned. Ma'am, you can trust me. I cut him off. No offense, son, but I've lived long enough to know what trust means when money's involved. The people nearby nodded quietly. The woman behind me even whispered, Good for you. Hensley sighed, then motioned for a guard to stand by. A few minutes later, 2 men in suits came from the back with gloves and magnifiers. They looked at each coin carefully, whispering terms I didn't understand. Mint condition, authentic strike, Philadelphia issue. After what felt like forever, one of them turned to the manager and nodded. Every single one is real. The air went still. Hensley swallowed hard and looked back at me. Mrs. Booker, he said softly, based on current auction values, the total worth of these coins could exceed $3 million. The words hit me like thunder. $3 million. That jar that everyone laughed at, the the one my husband filled with love and patience, was worth more than every car in that parking lot. My knees gave out, and the teller rushed to help me into a chair. I remember whispering, "Lord Harold, you saved me again." Hensley cleared his throat and put on a polite smile, but I could see it, the greed hiding behind his eyes. He said, "Of course the bank can assist you in managing these funds, Mrs. Booker. We can set up a private account, handle the auction process, ensure you get the best deal." I looked at him, steady and calm now. "You mean take a big cut, right?" He froze. Everyone heard it. Even the guard smirked. "Sir," I said, "I may be old, but I'm not stupid. My Harold didn't save these coins for you to get rich off them. You'll give me what's fair, and I'll take care of the rest." He stammered something about standard procedures, but before he could finish, a young woman stepped forward from the line. She wore a navy blazer and held out her business card. "Mrs. Booker," she said, "I work with a private collectibles firm. If you'd like, I can connect you directly to certified auctioneers. No middleman fees." Hensley's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, this is a bank," she cut him off. "And this is a free country." The whole room chuckled. For the first time, the laughter wasn't at me. It was with me. I smiled and took her card. "Thank you, dear." Hensley tried to regain control. "Mrs. Booker, I must insist we keep these coins secured in our vault for now." I stood up, slowly but firmly. "No, sir. You had your chance when you laughed at me. I'll take my husband's jar home now." He blinked, speechless. But security protocol." The teller looked at him, then back at me. "Mrs. Booker, I'll help you carry it out." She brought the jar, now carefully wrapped in a towel. As I held it, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Not in judgment this time, but in awe. I turned to the crowd and said softly, "Don't ever let anyone tell you your worth by what they see on the outside. Sometimes the real treasure is the thing they overlook." Applause broke out. Even the guard clapped. As I walked out, the young woman with the card caught up to me. "Mrs. Booker," she said, "I wasn't lying. These coins could change your life. I can arrange everything confidentially. You won't even need to come back here." I nodded. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll be in touch." When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, and I just stood there on the steps, jar in hand, tears streaming down my cheeks. For the first time in years, I felt Harold beside me. I whispered, "You always said these coins had a purpose. Guess you were right, old man." I didn't notice the people filming until later. By that evening, someone had posted the video online. Bank mocks grandma's coin, then finds out they're worth millions. It spread faster than wildfire. By morning, reporters were calling, neighbors were knocking, and strangers were sending messages saying, "You give us hope." But the best part? The bank manager himself showed up at my porch that afternoon, flowers in hand, with a camera crew pretending to apologize. He said, "Mrs. Booker, I just want to personally say—" I held up my hand. "Son, I don't need your apology. Just treat the next person who walks in with respect. You never know what kind of miracle they're carrying." He stood there frozen, then lowered his head and left. I didn't sleep much that night. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the old fridge and the ticking of the wall clock Harold hung up 30 years ago. Every corner of that house still carried his touch. His coat still hung on the back of the door. His boots still sat by the mat, like he'd just come home from work and forgotten to put them away. I sat at the kitchen table with that jar between my hands, watching the coins glow faintly under the warm light. For hours, I just stared at them. Each one felt like a heartbeat, a piece of him that refused to fade. The world was calling it a miracle discovery. But I knew better. This wasn't luck. It was love that had been quietly waiting to be seen. Around midnight, I heard a soft knock at my door. When I opened it, it was the young woman from the bank, Samantha, she said her name was. She looked nervous, holding a small leather briefcase. "I'm sorry for showing up so late, Mrs. Booker," she said. but I wanted to make sure you got this before morning. She came in, sat at the table, and carefully opened the case. Inside was a stack of papers and a small envelope. I contacted the auction house I mentioned, she said softly. They confirmed interest. The coins could sell for over $3 million, but they want to make it private. No publicity. No cameras. I took a long breath. That sounds just fine to me. Samantha smiled. I figured you'd say that. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a simple contract. Clear terms, no tricks, no cuts, just the truth. Mrs. Booker, she said, if you sign this, the funds will be transferred to your account within a week. I looked at her. This young woman, maybe half my age, sitting in my small kitchen like family. There was something kind in her eyes, not pity, respect. Why are you helping me, dear? I asked. She hesitated. Then she smiled softly. My grandmother used to clean offices for a bank, just like that one. She was treated the same way you were. I couldn't let history repeat itself. That broke me. I felt tears rolling down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. I reached across the table, held her hand, and whispered, "Thank you, baby. You just made my Harold's dream come true." We signed the papers right there under the kitchen light. No fancy pens, no cameras, just two women doing what the world rarely lets women like us do. Win quietly. When she left, I stood by the window for a long time, watching her car disappear down the empty street. Then I turned to the jar. It was almost empty now, just a few coins left clinking at the bottom. I took one out and held it up to the light. "Thank you, Harold," I whispered. "You really outdid yourself this time." Then I put that single coin on the windowsill beside his photo. My last little piece of him. A week later, the money came through. $3 million and some change. I didn't tell anyone, not even my children. People talk, and talk can twist kindness into envy real quick. Instead, I made a list. Not of things to buy, but of lives to fix. First, I paid off the house, every penny. No more letters, no more fear. Then I called the church and told them I wanted to fund the food pantry for the next 5 years. Anonymous donation, I said. They tried to ask my name. I told them, just say it's from a friend who believes in full plates. After that, I visited the community center where Harold used to volunteer. Their roof was leaking. I paid to have it fixed and left before they could thank me. Finally, I went back to the steel mill, or what was left of it. The place had closed down years ago, just rust and dust now. But behind the fence, I found the old locker room. Harold's locker was still there. I sat in front of it, placed a small envelope inside, and whispered, "For the next Harold who walks through these doors." Inside that envelope, I left a check for $50,000, a scholarship for any worker A.S. child who wanted to go to college. When I left, I didn't feel rich. I felt light. 2 months later, the house felt different, peaceful, like it could finally breathe again. One afternoon, a letter came in the mail. It was from the auction house. Inside was a short note and a photograph. The note read, "Dear Mrs. Booker, the auction was completed privately and successfully. The buyer requested anonymity, but asked us to share this message with you. Your story reminded me that real wealth isn't counted in dollars, it is counted in dignity. Thank you for teaching me that." Tears blurred my eyes as I looked at the photo. It was of one of Harold's pennies, framed in glass, displayed under a museum light with a small plaque beneath it. The plaque read, "The Booker Coin Collection, dedicated to love, labor, and the legacy of ordinary greatness." I traced the words with my finger, smiling through the tears. That night, I made myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the sun dip behind the trees. The sky was painted in gold and copper, the same colors as those coins. I realized then that I didn't need the world to see my story. I just needed to know that Harold's kindness, our life together, had finally been valued the way it always should be been. Final line of the climax, voiceover style for video. The world called it luck. I call it love, the kind that outlives everything, even money. It's funny how silence can be louder than applause. Months passed, and life went back to its slow, familiar rhythm. The seasons rolled over the town like old music. Winter melted into spring, the dogwoods bloomed again, and the world just kept moving. But something in me had shifted. I'd always believed that age made you invisible, that the world stopped seeing you once your hair went gray. But ever since that day at the bank, I started noticing the small ways people looked at me differently. Not with pity, but with respect. The teller from the bank, Samantha, started visiting every Sunday. We'd sit on the porch, drink sweet tea, and talk about everything from the news to her new baby niece. Sometimes she'd bring a bag of groceries and say, "It's just a little thank you." But I could see in her eyes that what she was really thanking me for was hope. One morning, she told me something that made my heart swell. "They changed the policy at the bank," she said. "No more dismissing people who walk in with coins or old bills. Every customer gets treated equally now. No exceptions." I chuckled softly. About time. That might have seemed small to most people, but to me it was monumental. Because I knew what it meant to be dismissed. To walk into a place and have your worth decided by the color of your skin, your clothes, or the way you speak. For decades, I'd lived in a world that measured people like me in fractions, never seeing the whole story. But now, for once, the scales had tilted just a little in the right direction. A few weeks later, something strange happened. A letter came from a college I'd never heard of, Booker Memorial Scholarship Committee. I thought it was junk mail at first until I opened it. Inside was a photo of a young man smiling wide, holding a certificate. The letter said he was the first recipient of the Harold Booker Memorial Grant, awarded to the child of a factory worker who wanted to study engineering. At the bottom, it said, "Your generosity has already changed one life. His name is Marcus. He says thank you." I pressed the photo to my chest and cried right there in the kitchen. That's when I realized my story wasn't about coins anymore. It was about circulation, about how love, dignity, and kindness move through the world the same way currency does, passed from hand to hand, life to life. And just like money, they multiply when shared. Word started spreading around town, though I never told anyone the full story. People just started noticing quiet changes. A new roof on the community center, the church pantry always full, kids going to school without worrying about lunch money. Neighbors began whispering, "Someone out there's doing good." I'd smile and keep my secret. Because it wasn't about being known. It was about making sure no one else felt small the way I had that day in the bank. Then, one afternoon, Samantha came rushing over, holding her phone. "Mrs. Booker, you're not gonna believe this." She showed me a news article. "Rare coin collection discovered in small town sells for record-breaking $3.1 million. The headline made my stomach twist. They'd finally gone public, but when I scrolled down, I froze. The article said the buyer remained anonymous, but they de-donated the collection to a museum in honor of an unnamed woman who believed every life had value. And beneath the photo of the display was the inscription I knew by heart. Dedicated to love, labor, and the legacy of ordinary greatness. I couldn't stop the tears this time. They weren't sad tears, though. They were cleansing. Like the world was finally learning how to see people like Harold and me, not as background characters, but as history makers, quiet ones. The years rolled on. I grew slower, softer. But every so often I'd still visit that same bank. I'd walk in with my little purse, and the new manager, a young black man named Marcus, would stand up and say, "Good morning, Mrs. Booker." And I'd smile, because I knew. That same boy from the scholarship letter had found his way back home. He told me one day, "You know, I used to be embarrassed when my mama paid bills in coins. Now I tell people, don't underestimate the value of what you can't count." I laughed. Sounds like something my Harold would have said. We talked for a while about faith, work, and worth, the things that truly measure a person. And as I left, he said, "Thank you for seeing people before the world did." That night I sat by the window again, like I always did, and watched the streetlights flicker across the glass jar on the sill. Only one coin remained inside, Harold's lucky penny. I picked it up, turned it in the light, and thought about everything that had happened. The laughter, the shame, the miracle, the change. It all came full circle. Like that coin between my fingers. The world will always have people who judge by what they see. But there will also always be those who look deeper, who see value where others see nothing. And that's the kind of wealth no bank will ever measure. Final voiceover line for YouTube outro. They laughed at my jar of coins, but those coins carried stories, stories that turned out to be worth more than gold, because real wealth isn't what's in your bank, it's what's in your heart.